as recruiters, as people working in any people department, we should be encouraging more people to apply. We should make sure that we've got processes in place to allow for neurodivergence or hearing impaired, anything like that. If they can do that role physically, then we shouldn't restrict who comes for it and who applies for it. And again, if businesses are, then I think they're really lowering the quality of their talent pool. Treating everybody the same is not equality. Making adjustments for people in the right scenarios and doing things in the right way, that's how you get equality within a business. What I will say is, don't pass up opportunities. If you think you can do a role, go for it. If you're reading the job spec of an advert and you think, actually I've only really got 50% of that, apply for it. When I'm looking at CVs in particular, I'm looking for kind of key statements within that CV. I'm less bothered about the setup of the CV. I'm less bothered about grammar, because you don't know kind of what backgrounds people are from, dyslexia, different kind of neurodivergence. So I'm less bothered about I think in the past people have focused on, if a CV looks bad, that means the person's bad, and it's just not accurate. You've got to have development conversations with your manager. You've got to push that through, because you can't expect someone to do that for you. You've got to be at the forefront of your own destiny, if you like. And if you're ambitious, if you want to progress, if you want to develop, it normally starts at the ground.
Hi, it's Chris here from Talent Unboxed, and thank you if this is the first time that you have found us and you're interested in understanding more about how to navigate the talent market. So the podcast was created to help business leaders and candidates navigate the talent space better. So in this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Ben, who's a HR business partner at HomeServe Finance. HomeServe are a huge organisation, and Ben shares some fantastic tips on not only how to navigate culture as he's moved a corporate experience into a smaller business, but he's also shares what it means to be neurodiverse in a huge corporate environment, and also gives lots of positive tips for candidates of how to navigate the job space. So enjoy this one, and please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because that is the only way that we're going to be able to continue bringing you content like this. So like and subscribe, and enjoy the episode.
Warning: this episode discusses ADHD, neurodiversity, mental health and suicide awareness.
Okay, so welcome to Talent Unboxed, Ben. I'm delighted to have you come and join us at our offices here in Northampton. I know you've travelled a fair way to get here today, so I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to just introduce yourself for those that are listening, to tell us a bit about you and who you are?
Yeah, so my name's Ben Eveson. I've worked at HomeServe for the past 15 years. Started off kind of working through operational roles through call centres and contract management, and then in parts, those kind of areas, and then moved into a people role, so ER case manager for HomeServe, and then into talent acquisition as a business partner. And then more recently, I've moved from the corporate side of HomeServe UK into a smaller startup element called HomeServe Finance. We offer finance for green energy, boilers, solar panels, batteries, electric chargers, those kind of things.
Yeah. And now you've just touched on, and we'll cover this off in a bit more detail, because I think your journey in particular is quite interesting in terms of how you've gone from operations into talent and now into HR. And while you're doing all of that, bringing up a family.
Yeah, it's been busy.
Doing a master's, an MBA. So for me, it's really interesting, and certainly Talent Unboxed was created to help people navigate the talent space, right? Yeah. So whether that be a candidate looking for tips and advice on how they can navigate their careers, or even start on the ladder in navigating their careers, or for business owners and senior leaders to make best of the talent market. So as you just touched on, your corporate experience, then moving into a still within the bigger organisation, but a startup side of that could be really useful. So, do you want to just touch on how have you balanced all of that stuff? To be honest, with what's your MBA's in what?
It's Masters in Business Administration.
Yeah.
I did that at Nottingham Trent University through the government apprenticeship levy, so there was no cost to myself. It was all done through work. Work commit to allowing you to have like a day off a week to study and do kind of off the job training.
Which is that 20% that you need to do.
Yeah, and this was like a 2-year program, culminating in a dissertation. So you have to do a business study about your organisation. So I did a study on like leavers and the reasons people leave, and the difference between people leaving for reasons such as pay, development, or is it actually more culture based, which is really interesting. And then just passed that with a merit, and got the degree and got to graduate as a 35, I think at the time, 36.
Okay. So I don't think you mind me mentioning this, but you've been quite public of the fact that you've got ADHD.
Yep.
So that in itself can, I know, be quite challenging when it comes to how you navigate the job space. Equally, I think though, and I think you've probably proven this, it can also be your superpower, right?
Yeah.
So just explain to us, for the last 15 years at HomeServe, how you've gone from that operational role, and then you've worked your way up, and then you've offset into those other teams, because I know you've had quite a few jobs within the 15 years you've been there, right?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult balance. So my diagnosis came quite recently. So I've always had a different mind through being at school and other kind of areas through life, and I've always kind of known something wasn't the same as what other people experience, but more recently kind of went down the formal diagnosis route and got that, and I think it opened my eyes to quite a lot of things. But from a work perspective, I think in my early career, I wouldn't have. People would say it to me. People would notice traits and would ask me if if something was, if I had something like that. And I'd always say, it's just my character traits or whatever. But from a work perspective, I think it allows you to be tenacious in your pursuit for promotion. So one of my things within ADHD is perfectionism, which is a blessing and a curse, because it can make you feel inadequate. It can compound. I know you did a recent episode around imposter syndrome. Yeah. It can do. It can give a lot of imposter syndrome, symptoms that you have to then try and navigate. But then equally, it lets you. It gives me the ability to keep striving for more. My difficulty is knowing when more is enough, and when I need to stop, reflect, have some time. I've had probably 9 jobs in 15 years, and I think most people would, if you see a CV where someone's had 9 jobs over 15 years, you think they're a job hopper. So I am a job hopper, but I'm a job hopper within HomeServe. I don't think that's a bad thing outside of one business either. I don't think, when I look at a CV, if someone's had, various jobs, a lot of the time it's the way you progress quicker. It's easier to progress externally than it is within a singular company generally. I think people find, the better promotions, the bigger pay rises when you go outside of your internal organisation. I've had an internal journey that I feel has been character building. It's been great. It's given me lots of opportunities that I can only really be thankful of HomeServe for, because I probably wouldn't have got them if I'd have gone external. I don't think my career would have taken the same path that it has if I'd have left. So yeah, it's, the ADHD element, I think it just allows me to pursue, development and promotion where others may not. They may look to consolidate where they're at.
And obviously now you've gone from that. What made you go into the talent space from operational space?
So that was an interesting one. So HomeServe are very good at allowing people to develop.
Right.
So I went from operations into employee relations.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned to you previously, on paper, I wouldn't have got that job externally because from a qualification perspective, I didn't have it. You know, I had the practical application, you know, the professional experience, the day-to-day management of people issues, but in terms of qualifications and pure ER experience, I didn't have it. So they took a chance on me. I interviewed well. I feel interviews are a strength. I'm able to really kind of sell myself and, you know, translate my skill set across into different areas. And I was initially given it on a 12-month secondment. Did that for 11, 12 months, built a function around it and kind of carved out a role. And then I was asked if I'd move into talent acquisition. So there was a challenge in the engineering space, lots of open vacancies, lots of challenges, and they asked me to go and have a look at it. And me being kind of me and me having that, I guess, ADHD brain that loves things kind of new and exciting and challenging, I kind of jumped in feet first and did that for a few years and got those engineering levels down to a really low level with a great team.
So just for the people listening, just explain, HomeServe are a business that go out, and if somebody breaks down at home, they'll come out a bit like...
Yeah, so the element I worked in, HomeServe UK, was predominantly people pay for a level of cover, and that will cover their boilers, plumbing, drains, water supply pipe, pest, locks, doors, those kind of things.
So when you say about engineers, it's the people that will come out and
gas
visit.
Engineers, plumbers, drainage engineers, water supply pipe engineers that will come out and fix issues within people's properties.
Which in itself, you know, when there's a skill shortage, they're a tougher recruit, right? There isn't a massive amount of those people out there.
Yeah.
So coming up with a way that you can reduce that down, as well as in balancing that employee relations bit that you'd already built ahead of that, did that go hand in hand, do you think, your experience of those both things to make sure?
Yeah, I think so. I think talent acquisition opened my eyes to, I guess, working with varied stakeholders in different elements. And I think that gave me experience and confidence to be able to operate at a kind of a different level, because all of a sudden you're then starting to, rather than being more advisory, you're starting to then influence. And I think when you start to learn how to influence through support and guidance, it gives you a bit of an edge.
Okay. And what difference has it made for you, do you think, as you've now completed those qualifications? Is it changed the way you think in terms of
so I think qualifications are great. I think having that ability to do something like that at the stage in life that I was at was really good. Although it was really tough, you know, I was managing lockdowns, homeschooling, working, and then doing the degree. So it was quite a lot at one time. And I think the family will definitely say that they suffered my my moods at times in terms of kind of workload. But I think it's really beneficial for me. So I joined that course as a kind of first level, so a little bit higher than a team manager, but not quite a departmental manager, so more like a senior ops manager, if you like. I joined that course as that. So I'd had lots of experience, lots of kind of people leading, lots of operational and delving into kind of the strategy elements of stuff. That course really opened my eyes to how important it is to understand strategy, to understand the commercial elements, how operations, HR, marketing links to a successful business, the importance of profit, the importance of cash flow, things that I guess when you're working at a kind of a junior level that you don't really see, but actually your role impacts all those things. Having an understanding of it, though, I think allows you to look at things slightly differently. And again, speaking about having an edge, it gives you an edge on other candidates. So if you are searching externally in the market for a role, that could be a differentiating factor between getting a role or not, or getting a role over somebody else.
And, you know, being in a HR BP role that you are now, as a business the size of HomeServe, is you're working across multiple channels, multiple cultures. You know, how have you, now you're in the startup bit, how have you taken, you know, balancing all of that stuff and then implemented So
HomeServe do things really well. HomeServe are great at looking after their people. They have people promises, customer promises that are lived and breathed. You can see that throughout the people that you kind of deal with. So what I learned from HomeServe in a big corporate is that a big corporate can do things well. They can do things on a personal level. They can make people feel like they're not just a number or a kind of a wheel in a cog. And I think I was able to take that from a business. You know, in HomeServe, you've got departments for everything. So in the people team, talent acquisition, you've got ER, you've got HR, you've got payroll, you've got benefits, you've got shared services, you've got communications and engagement. In HomeServe Finance, that is me. So what it's given me really, so I've been able to take that experience across into that and apply my, I guess, desire to learn to kind of just soak everything in, utilize it as a real opportunity to develop my professional experience. So some things that I've not dealt with kind of readily, I've been able to really go in there and kind of sink my teeth into, and also go over there with a thought process of cultures can really be built with the people that are in there. And even though it's a small outfit, you know, it's really important that we get that culture right. We're working on that now. It's a day-to-day thing. It's something I talk about a lot in our kind of monthly newsletters. It's some things that I talk about with the senior leadership team in kind of our monthly one-to-ones, and you know, embedding good practices, making sure that everyone receives a good experience. One-to-ones are important. How those one-to-ones are delivered are important in terms of the how the conversation is and what's included. I learned all that from working in kind of a big corporation that really cares about people.
So one of the things that we're seeing at the minute quite often is, you know, we could work with a business and go through quite a vigorous interview and sourcing and selection process when it comes to finding talent, only for it to fall down or, you know, catch someone off guard because the onboarding might be poor.
Yeah.
How much value within an organisation like HomeServe, or even within the bit that you're now building, you know, the startup finance arm, how much focus are you having on onboarding, or how much value do you put on it?
Huge. The recruitment process and the onboarding process is the first catch point for the people that you're recruiting, right? So from application through to interviews, and you know, the way they communicate, the way that you tell people they've not been successful, all really important. You know, somebody that's not been successful today might want to apply tomorrow for a different role and may be successful there. So how you treat them will depend on whether or not you see those as like a repeat applicant. From an onboarding perspective, I think how you engage through, so it depends on what your onboarding process is, right? How you engage with those candidates through that process is really, really important. How they receive their contract, how they understand their benefits, even to the point of being spoke to before they start, in terms of knowing where to be, when to be there, what's going to happen, being able
like a quick phone call.
Yeah,
Hi,
yeah.
John, how you
So
doing?
I'll always speak to the hiring manager and say, listen, make sure you speak to this person today. Give them all the lowdown of what's happening. I'd have spoke to them various points. So I look after the whole of onboarding. So we have a system that I piggybacked off Main Homes, which is great. You know, a startup might not have the capacity to invest in a system like we've got that does pretty much end-to-end recruiting all the way up to starting. So we utilize that from an onboarding perspective. So all our onboarding is digital. So you get your contract, your offer letter digital, you sign everything digital, you put all your information in digital. That transfers into our system. So it's for a candidate now, it's seamless. Before that was kind of manual. And then, you know, I will have conversations throughout that process. So we're a financially regulated organisation, so you have to have checks. I communicate through that checking process when they've passed those checks, if anything flags on those checks. Kind of up until the point where they're kind of signed off to be able to start, I've kind of held their hand through that process, whether that's via email or via phone call or text, depending on what, you know, it's always beneficial to know what communication people prefer. You know, it's good to work with candidates in that sense.
Yeah.
And then handing it over to the hiring manager. And I think the people that have started since I've been there have had a really good experience. Before I started, it was probably a little bit less involved. But, you know, again, in a startup, you've not got the, you know, the ability to manage things like that in every, you know, to every nth degree because of the volume of people you've got within your operation. I think they brought me in for these kind of reasons, and that's what I'm trying to deliver, is, you know, making sure that these processes are done with the right thoughts for the candidate and how it will make the candidate feel.
And I think you're a big fan of, experience over qualification from conversations.
Yeah, definitely. I think, are qualifications important? Yes, I think they are. And I think businesses do look at them. You see a lot of adverts these days that will say, master's degree, essential, CIP level 7 essential. But if you've got someone that started off as a HR advisor and worked their way up to HR BP or head of HR over a 15-year period, there's nothing that they're not going to have dealt with in that time period that they can learn from a book. I think the learning expands your mind a little bit. So I do, it does give lots of benefits, but I feel like experience is paramount. People getting experience through practical application of, whether that's capability meetings or disciplinaries, or I learned that from doing it. So as a line manager, you learn the ins and outs. You take the advice from the HR experts, you take that in, you then utilize that next time, and I think that's really held me in good stead to be able to implement that throughout my kind of journey through ops into eventually into HR. But yeah, experience is key, and I think varied experience as well. Careers don't have to be linear.
Yeah, no. Cool.
I fell foul of that for a long time in terms of where my journey should go and be. And I think, if I could give any advice to people looking at their career, particularly if you don't know what you want to do, I spent a lot of time in that space. I used to say, what do I want to be when I grow up? Well, I still don't know. Probably still don't know now. But actually, you don't have to stick to a linear path. If you're a call center agent, you don't have to then be a call center manager and head of a call center. It doesn't have to be that trajectory.
Well, you're a prime example of that,
exactly.
right?
I started off as a call center manager in home, so it was Eon back then, and kind of worked through varied roles, gaining different levels of experience, managing people, managing contractors. What I started to do is just take opportunities as they came to me, applying for opportunities as I saw them. I think people get stuck in a thing that they have to wait for something to kind of land in their lap, particularly when you're looking for internal promotions, but you can't wait because you'll get picked by someone that's looking for it.
And I think, when it comes to internal applications, I think there's an element of the business already knows and trusts you. So, you can demonstrate your trustworthiness, and you can demonstrate the hard work and your deliverables that you've achieved and all of that stuff. And yes, although a sideways step into a new team or whatever might exactly be that, and you might not have the experience, but I think what's undervalued in these days is that making a good hire is far much more than what that person brings in terms of skill.
Yeah.
Because I could be the best recruiter in the world, but if an absolute knobhead and I'm going to disrupt everyone when I join a business, that isn't considered a good hire. I could be a top biller in a recruitment space, and upset the apple cart every 5 minutes because I'm a bit of a diva. And would that be considered a good hire or not? So I actually am a big fan of how you've managed to navigate through different areas. I think, do you think that when you've had your diagnosis, going back to that, do you think that has played a part in that, of you, being kind of siloed into?
I think it probably held me back initially because historically I would have never kind of looked outside the box. Yeah. Because I had a plan, and that was kind of it. And one thing that is prevalent in people with ADHD is like rejection sensitivity. So going for interviews and being told no can be quite devastating. Yeah. It's something that I've kind of struggled with over different kind of areas of my life, but luckily I've not had too many knockbacks professionally, so I've not had to deal with it too much. When I have, it's felt almost crushing. And I think what led me into an AR world was getting a significant knockback. At the time it felt crushing, and I thought I'd failed, and I was rubbish, and I was never going to get anywhere in life. To then taking a sideways step, it was sideways from what I was doing, and then I probably took sideways steps for probably 4 years. But in those sideways steps, gained valuable experience that led me to where I am now, which I'm in a great business. I've got a great manager. I love the job. I've got no issue getting up in the morning. So it's, that's what you want in a job, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that, a lot of people could be listening to this and learning that sometimes you do have to make multiple moves across before you can go up. Yeah. And don't just, I think there's a lot of expectation in the younger generation now that, I've been in the job for 12 months. Surely I deserve the next level up just because, I've turned up every day and I've done my job.
Yeah.
Where I think whether you're in a bigger organisation or a smaller one, I'm a great believer in you behave and do the job that you want rather than the job that you've got, right? So whereas if you've had to navigate your way across as a description, if you've had to navigate your way across before you then go up, you still showed really good determination, perseverance, dedication, loyalty. There are a lot of buzzwords, it might sound like, but for people listening that are in the candidate space that want to know how to navigate and get better, sometimes you've got to do that, right? You've got to put the sweat equity in.
Opportunities don't come around every day, and there's only a finite number of positions available for people. There's only a finite number of promotions available within organisations. Just because you're the best agent or you've been there for a year, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be ready to take that next step. So I think working within organisations to understand what that progress looks like, and I think it's a conversation that people shy away because it can be uncomfortable, right? Trying to understand your gaps. I look at my gaps every day. I revise my kind of role profile against where I want to be and look at what I need to get and speak with my manager regularly about how I can translate that into experience. And I think people overlook that quite a lot in terms of they go and get a job and just expect their experience will carry them through. You've got to have development conversations with your manager. You've got to push that through because you can't expect someone to do that for you. You've got to be at the forefront of your own destiny, if you like. And if you're ambitious, if you want to progress, if you want to develop, it normally starts at the ground, and you may need to take 2 or 3 side steps to gain experience, then move into a different role. What I will say is don't pass up opportunities. If you think you can do a role, go for it. If you're reading the job spec of an advert and you think, actually, I've only really got 50% of that, apply for it. A lot of your skills will translate into some other things, and the other things you can learn. One of my favourite professional mentors said to me, and it's quite widely used, fake it till you make it. In those elements, it's absolutely true. If you can do 50% of the job, you're halfway there, right? You can learn the rest. And I think just looking at it as an overall candidate experience, women are far less likely to apply for a job that they don't match, up to 90% of the essential requirements on there. I always put a statement on our adverts that say, if you don't meet all the requirements, please still apply. Because that's
an interesting thing to put on an advert.
Yeah, I think it opens it up to people, and it improves the diversity of the applicants, because we know that as a male, statistically, you will apply for a job if you've got less of the requirements than if you were female. So
why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Is it because us blokes have probably bigger egos, or
probably?
Probably.
I think there's if you Google it, there's a ton of research on it. But yeah, that one of the things that looking at when I was in recruitment, trying to recruit engineers, was constantly trying to get female engineers in that space, through like apprenticeships or through recruitment processes. But again, it's getting the applicants for it, isn't it? So it's that's the reason why I put on our job adverts that regardless of whether you feel like you can do the full spec, please apply and we'll have a chat with you, because if
there are some roles though where obviously you can't do that if they expect a certain qualification, or a you can't have an electrician if you haven't got an electrician qualification.
If you're doing like a professional role.
However, in a commercial setting where you've got you know, you might have a real keen eye for detail, so you might be good in marketing, but
Yeah.
you've never done, you know, you haven't got any formal qualification in it, but you've run 2 or 3 TikTok pages or Instagram pages,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
you know, I like that angle. I think that's a really good piece of advice.
yeah.
for
I
people.
want to see more CVs. The more CVs I see, the better chance I've got of getting a great candidate, right? Because
Would your talent team agree with you on that one? Do you think?
I think so. I think they want to see good, a good amount of CVs. You know, when I'm looking at CVs in particular, I'm looking for kind of key statements within that CV. I'm less bothered about the setup of the CV. I'm less bothered about grammar because, you don't know kind of what backgrounds people are from, dyslexia, different kind of neurodivergence. So I'm less bothered about I think in the past, people have focused on, if a CV looks bad, that means the person's bad, and it's just not accurate. So I think it's got better with kind of AI, because anyone can stick their CV in there and ask someone to ask Claude or Copilot to produce them a good CV. But I think, if you're looking for the best candidate, you need the right amount of people to apply for that role. If you're shrinking your pool by making, you see some job adverts, there's 30 lines of essential requirements and you need 20 years of experience. Like, you're looking for a unicorn, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time, like, you're looking for the best person. The best person may have the worst looking CV, but actually in person they're incredible, and they've got the right attitude and they've got the right skill set and they've got the right base culture to come into your organization, but you're missing out on them because they spell there wrong on their CV, they use the wrong there, or it's formatted in a way that's not pleasing kind of to the eye. So I think people should stop restricting who they look at, and people should, if you've got the right qualifications but you don't meet some of the essential criteria that's experience based, then if you're going for a job at Home Serve Finance, apply, because I will look at your CV and you will get reviewed, and we will take a look at that as an overall view, rather than looking specifically for that immediate skill. Do you have the transferable skills? If you've managed people, you can more than likely manage a department, for instance. If you're a good head of, you may be an amazing director. That's the progression. You see it all the time, don't you? You probably see it as well, where you see director level adverts that say 15 years as a director. Well, you've automatically there got rid of an entire pool of people that are working at an extremely high level as a head of a department that might be looking after 500 people, 500 million pounds worth of turnover, or 500 pounds worth of purchasing, but you've turned them away because they've not got director. In the title. So what I would say is, people, look at what you're applying for and don't be put off by giving it a go, sticking your CV in for a chance.
What's your view on international applications that are coming out of the graduate scheme? So, for example, and there is a reason I'm asking this, right? So we had a customer recently that they're looking for a very niche skill that we found somebody with that skill. However, they were a grad, and they were on a graduate visa, or like a student visa. So they'd finished a course, they're now able to work. They still had a solid 12 months left on their visa. The likelihood is, if they find work within that space, that their visa will then be extended, or the process of changing that visa. But the end employer was reluctant to explore that candidate, even though they had the skill. Because of the kind of scenario of, what if they don't get extended? Would you advise businesses in a similar way as you were just advising around candidates to apply?
I think that's short-sighted. You're effectively making a decision based on a what if, and I think decisions should be based on fact, skill, and experience, rather than what might happen. Would we look at a graduate on a 12-month that's got 12 months left on the visa? We would, because I've done it. We've done that. We've had that within our current business. People on different visas that are, that have to be renewed. There's no guarantee of renewal, but at the time, were they the best person for that job? Yes, they were. So we've employed that person based on skill set, ability, how they came across throughout the process. And when it comes to the renewal of their visa, we'll support whatever's needed to get that through.
Yeah,
However,
but it might not necessarily mean it costs the business money to sponsor them or anything.
No.
But it's just a simple case you might have to back up their application.
Yeah, do you want to turn down a great candidate because you may only get 12 months out of them? Or do you want to get a candidate that's going to make a real impact in 12 months with a possibility that will then lead into something more permanent? I think my opinion would be that, you've got to give that if that's the best person, you've got to give it a go. If you're looking for a niche skill and that's there.
Yeah. No,
it
was a
could
niche
that niche
skill.
skill be trained in that 12 months to somebody else from a support perspective as a backup? You don't want a single point of failure. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily cut my nose off in those situations. I'd certainly look at them from a face value perspective and make a decision based on the business requirement. If it was 3 months, maybe that'd be a different conversation, because that may be more difficult because you'd be probably just getting into a position where they've got the business under their feet. But I think you're looking at 12 months. Is it the best candidate? And if the answer is yes, then I'd go for it. I think business should take a similar approach. Again, we need to stop restricting our talent pool.
Yeah.
There's tons of talent out there that are going unnoticed because like I said, they've not got the brightest CV or they're not putting their names into the right hats. As recruiters, as people working in any people department, we should be encouraging more people to apply. We should make sure that we've got processes in place to allow for neurodivergence or hearing impaired, anything like that. If they can do that role physically, then we shouldn't restrict who comes for it and who applies for it. And again, if businesses are, then I think they're really lowering the quality of their talent pool.
I think one thing I'm really keen on understanding is, and I'm not pushing this too hard, I hope, right? But now you've got your diagnosis. I think we work with a couple of local businesses that support neurodivergent applications and support adults with autism into employment and stuff. So we're big fans of that here. Do you think now your attitude has changed or developed, or your approach to recruitment has changed, given that your diagnosis is?
Yeah, I don't think it's changed. I think I've always been an inclusive recruiter and an ally to underrepresented groups across my various roles. I think it's allowed me to kind of educate more. So I think I've never really spoke about it too much. I always felt like it would hold me back. Like if it's almost like it felt like it might be admitting a weakness.
But I think there's going to be a lot of people listening that are going to feel like that.
Yeah, definitely. I felt that for years, so I would never kind of entertain that conversation in a professional environment until really, I got the diagnosis and I started working for Home Serve Finance, and I thought, now's the time for me to, I guess to let people know that that I do have ADHD and this is what it can mean. When I actually spoke about that, a few people at work came to me and spoke to me about their own neurodiversity with kind of autism and things like that, which felt really amazing.
And that's what we've seen when we've worked with organisations that have then opened their arms to adults with autism. We'll put a candidate into a job and all of a sudden they're starting to get people come out that they've been there years and saying, oh, just by the way, I've got autism and I've hidden it all this time. And it's a really nice moment.
Well, it's important because I think you can make reasonable adjustments for people in those times. If you're a truly inclusive business, you can make adjustments for people that are neurodiverse or any form of disability or anything like that. You can support, and I think we do that really well. People that are neurodiverse can get overwhelmed, so knowing that you can take a break, if that happens, is a perfect example of not sticking to your breaks at 10, 12 and 2 for instance. And I think businesses can probably get better at things like that.
Well, that's a really cheap way, because I think a lot of businesses, when they think about neurodivergent reasonable adjustment or any reasonable adjustment, they always worry that it's going to cost them money, or
Yeah.
is it going to be expensive to do that, or what's the impact? And I remember when we were on the many times we've done seminars on this with an organisation called Track, Tom, who leads Track, would often say, if a bloke wants to sit at his computer wearing sunglasses, so what? It doesn't actually matter. Yeah, but that means Bob might want to wear sunglasses. Yeah, but if Bob wants to wear sunglasses, then what actually difference does it make? Those tiny little things that matter so much to some people actually means nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work in a business years ago before my time here where the uniform was very strict. It was shirt, tie, trousers, shoes. Mm-hmm. I hate wearing a tie. Like, I've got a really fat neck. It's like 18 inches. So for my body, my neck's like really out of proportion. So wearing a tie.
I know the feeling, because Natalia always does my side profile when she edits these videos, and then I look horrendous.
I know. I need to probably
probably
that's the whole thing. Yeah, but like wearing a tie for me is really uncomfortable and can be quite triggering. If I go to an event where I have to wear a tie, the second I can take it off, it's off. And I think businesses have kind of progressed from that, strict dress code, which I 100%. Think is really inclusive of people, because, people with autism, people with ADHD, textures, feels, really important. So what they wear can dictate how they feel in that day. I'm never going to get a top button fastened, of a shirt that actually fits my body.
Yeah.
So it's important to have, I guess, inclusive policies, inclusive like uniform policies, and all those kind of things that support people within the business, because you don't know who in your business. You don't have to declare it, right? You don't have to walk into an interview and say, "Listen, I've got ADHD, I've got autism," but there'll be people in your business that do have those kind of neurodivergent traits, and having your policies make sure that those guys are, 1, catered for, 2, looked after, and 3, supported, are really important.
But and also, I think what's important these days as well is when you're writing the policy, just because it is the way it's always been doesn't mean it's the way it needs to be moving forward. Like I often get frustrated with businesses that say they're struggling to recruit. When we dig into it and we do some discovery around it, and then they'll go, well, we can never get the references back, and that slows everything down. And you're thinking, why are you still referencing? What purpose is the reference actually giving you? Like, do you read it? If a bad one came back, would you?
You won't receive a bad one because you're not actually allowed to send one, are you?
So what's the point?
So we do referencing from a. So it's part of the FCA checks. Mm-hmm. So we have to get a reference. But like, if we can get a personal one and they've not got professional on, then we can kind of leave it at that.
Yeah.
But, because not everyone's always left a business on good terms, and it's not always their fault.
Yeah.
So it can be quite difficult or kind of triggering for them to try and get one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, do we have to do things the same every single time? Well, no, because that's not actually, treating everybody the same is not equality. Making adjustments for people in the right scenarios and doing things in the right way, that's how you get, equality within a business. And I think it's really important that people understand that from it's not a one size fits all. That it may have been that way 20, 30 years ago when there was limited understanding of people's differences and everything like that. But now we're kind of in a different space, and I think it's really important that businesses, people, professionals, business owners, small business owners understand the need to support people in kind of different ways. The only way you find out these things is by good management, right? By having these conversations with people, by understanding people in one-to-ones, noticing things. If I notice somebody in work, looking a particular kind of way, I'm going to go and have a conversation with them. If you ask someone if they're okay, once, that's kind of, they're going to say they're okay as a standard response. If you ask them again, they're more likely to then, let you know what is going on. It's something that that's what I've kind of learned through the stuff we do with Bottled Up Blokes.
Let's touch on that now you've brought that up, because I did explore that before you came in, and it's a really, well, I'll let you tell it. What is Bottled Up Blokes?
Yeah, so in 2022, my friend Tim, he founded Bottled Up Blokes, which was basically an idea at the time to have a space for people to kind of jump on and have a conversation. It started off on Zoom. I think there was 5 or 6 of us on the course, something like that. general conversation, started a Facebook page. And again, the idea was always to create a safe space for men to open up, to try and break the stigma around men and kind of mental health. And we'll probably need to put a trigger warning, but like suicide rates in men are astronomically high. It's one of the biggest causes of death in young male adults. So it's a real problem in the world. I mean, any death by suicide is a real problem, but men generally don't talk about it, and it causes this kind of problem. So we opened up this space. So we started off with one talking group in where I live, in a place called South Normanton. That then went to 2 more venues, supported by various other companies such as Nottingham Forest Community Trust, Notts County Community Trust. We've worked with various local companies. We've got a friend at a pub local to us called the Boat, and he's supported us greatly throughout his time and done lots of fundraising for us. But what we've created is a community of men that have all got different challenges with their mental health, and whether that's general low mood or whether that's kind of a diagnosed, a serious diagnosed condition. Everyone that enters our space, their issue is valid, whether or not they think it is or not. So that's the difficulty, right? If you compare your struggle against somebody else's, if you compare low mood against someone that's got bipolar or schizophrenia, you're gonna automatically think that you're in a better position. So actually, why do I need this? That's not how we operate. We operate in that every challenge that you have is valid.
Is valid.
Yeah. We do football on a Monday night in a place called Tibshelf. We rent a couple of pitches there. We get regularly 20, 30, 40 blokes on there playing footy on a Monday night, from young kind of 18-year-olds up to 60-year-old fellas just getting out of the house to get some breathing space,
and company, I guess, because
yeah, exactly. It's a group. Some of these guys that work within Bottled Up Blokes, I consider my friends, and a few years ago I didn't know them. So, or I knew of them because they're local, but I wouldn't have necessarily put myself kind of with them. And we've just gone from strength to strength. We ended up in a couple of the bizarre things that have happened. We ended up going to 10 Downing Street for like a local community champions event. So me and Tim are pictured outside 10 Downing Street with our local MP at the time, and it was a real pinch for him. Like, we started this as a really small thing, and it kind of went from strength to strength. We've got over 1,000 members in the Facebook group. We do a yearly fundraiser in February, which is generally a bit of an old school kind of disco buffet raffle kind of situation to raise some funds and have a good day out. Everyone that works in Bottled Up Blokes volunteers. No one gets paid. So all funds that go out to things. We do treat them once a year to like a dinner. We take them out for a meal at a pub and have a few drinks together on Bottled Up Blokes, purely to say thank you for giving up their time. They all work full time. And
this is Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire focused, right? Is there plans for that to expand out of those areas, or are you trying to keep it local on purpose?
So we've thought about this a number of times, and we've had a lot of approaches. What we don't want to lose is the local feel of our group. So we are not. Some of these bigger companies are now, that are kind of doing these things, are doing great work in this space, but they start to get overheads and things like that, and then you start to, your fundraising then starts to become more vital. So we're kind of looking at keeping ours more kind of low key, supporting a smaller group of people, just really doing it really well, without kind of, it's also a lot of time. I work full time, I've got kids, wife, and so a lot of the other guys. So giving up your free time is quite valuable. Well, giving up your valuable time for this it is great. But if we start to kind of expand into other areas, it all of a sudden starts to create more challenges. You need to raise more funds, which is quite difficult to raise funds. You're going through different applications.
Well, it becomes a full-time job, right? And you already touched on this. And I know there are other volunteers within the business or within the charity that support it, but we're putting on a golf day for a local mental health charity here as well, and it does have a habit of taking over if you allow it. And when you've got your full-time job, you've got the family and
general life,
it kind of
it's tough. Because we had a family fun day recently at the at that local pub that guy owns. we pulled that together over a few weeks, but it was all consuming, making sure that we had carnival games and we had singers and we had prizes and kind of, all that kind of stuff. And,
Or even just reaching out and getting donations for things.
So, we're not a charity, we're a CIC, and that's a community interest company. It's a different way of kind of running an organisation like ours, but it's still all run through kind of fundraising. We're still bound by the same accounting rules. So, we have to deliver yearly accounts, and if we, are deemed to be in profit, we have to pay tax, same as any business. But I think what we've found over the years is we've been really able to expand within what we already do and offer things kind of, locally. Like we're taking 20 men on a residential to Wales at the end of August. We're going to be doing canyoning. We're going to go out for a meal, have a few drinks, and then we're going to do river tubing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's but again, when you think about that, when I sit back and look at it, it's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of, kind of outside of family and work, to look at this group of misfits effectively that have all come together to do these things together. And
but these are quite often how these things start, right? It's just a couple of people sat around the table having an idea, and then and with the joy of technology now, you don't have to be on the doorstep to benefit from those. So if somebody listening, is feeling low and they're a guy that wants to speak to similar people, how do they find the charity?
So it's Bottled Up Blokes on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, bottledupblokes.com online. Is it .com? I think it's .com.
Yeah.
Online, you'll find kind of all of our stuff on there. Our groups are in South Wilmington, Hucknall and Nottingham City Centre. We've got football in Tibshelf as well. We've got some things that are potentially in the pipeline with a couple of the kind of community trusts. We've done some talks with those guys, with their staff, to talk about what we do and just general kind of mental health. But if people are struggling, I'll just say, reach out, talk to somebody. If you are concerned about someone, invest time in asking them if they're okay more than once. Like I say, once is a automated answer. Twice you'll generally get a real response. We're trying to end the stigma and trying to give people a safe space to do this with. People need to, well, they don't need to, but it'd be really good if people look into how they can support people with mental health. I think people that have not suffered with mental health, it's difficult to kind of put yourself in their shoes. If someone says they're depressed and on the outside everything's looking really hunky-dory, you don't know what's kind of gone on under the surface or in somebody's past. We used to do a podcast called Bottled Up Blokes, opened up, a few episodes on all the channels, and I did the first episode with Tim, and I interviewed him, and I've known Tim for forever. He's a year above me at school. We were mates all the way through, and the things we spoke about in the podcast I just didn't know. Like his parents were never around. We'd go to his house, to have drinks as youngsters, and it was always open house, if you like, and that's because his parents were never there. So when he got from school and I was being made tea by my mum and dad,
he didn't have any.
Didn't have that, and that's kind of
And then that's impacted him in his adult.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And I think he won't mind me saying it's available to listen to in full, but you don't know what weights people are carrying.
People, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
and I think there's a lot to be learned from that, and I think that's probably a really good point to finish. Is the need to be out speaking about it, and you've touched on it a couple of times now, and not only with whether it be the charity stuff, the diversity stuff, talking about it. If you want to find your path in a career and you want to develop, be curious, ask questions. How do I do this? How do I get there?
Yeah, definitely.
And the only way you can do that is by talking. So thank you so much for coming on to Talent Unboxed. I've really enjoyed hearing about your story. So I really appreciate it. And then we'll, if you've enjoyed it as well today, please don't forget to subscribe, because that is the only way that we can continue bringing content towards the audience. So yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been good.
Cheers.